The morning of December 16th, 1944. Snow falls softly across the forests of the Ardennes, muffling the rumble of diesel engines. Inside a Tiger tank of the 501st Heavy Tank Battalion, Obersturmführer Klaus Weber peers through his gunner's optics, scanning the tree line ahead. His crew has been told what to expect. American Shermans, 75mm guns that bounce harmlessly off Tiger armor, easy prey. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. What Weber doesn't know, what no German tanker has been told, is that scattered among those American positions are shells that can kill his 57-ton fortress from nearly 1,000 yards away. Shells with tungsten cores traveling at speeds that transform physics into lethality. The Americans call them HVAP, high-velocity armor-piercing. And in the frozen killing grounds ahead, these 6 precious rounds per tank are about to rewrite everything the Wehrmacht thinks it knows about American firepower. This is the story of how a critical shortage became a devastating secret weapon, how industrial chemistry and desperate innovation gave 76mm Shermans the power to penetrate what German propaganda had promised was impenetrable, and how Tiger crews, trained to believe in their invincibility, learned too late that American tankers had been holding back something far more dangerous than standard ammunition. To understand how this happened, we must go back not to the snow-covered Ardennes, but to the summer of 1944, when American tank crews faced a crisis that threatened to turn France into a graveyard for Sherman tanks. July 25th, 1944. Normandy, France. The hedgerow country, south of Saint-Lô, erupts as Operation Cobra begins. American armor pours through the breach, expecting to fight Panzer IV's tanks they can handle. "50-ton monsters with sloped frontal armor, nearly 140mm thick, and a long 75mm gun that can kill a Sherman at ranges exceeding a mile. Staff Sergeant William McBride of the 2nd Armoured Division watches his platoon's lead tank erupt in flames. The Panther that killed it sits hull down nearly 1,500 yards away, impossible to reach. McBride's 75mm gun fires. The shell strikes the Panther's glacis plate and ricochets skyward, leaving nothing but a bright scar on German steel. The Panther's return shot punches through McBride's Sherman like paper, killing his loader and driver instantly. This scene repeats across Normandy dozens of times each day. American tanks, designed to support infantry rather than fight other tanks, find themselves hopelessly outgunned. The standard 75mm Sherman cannot penetrate a Panther's frontal armor at any practical combat range. Even the newer 76mm gun, rushed into service that summer, struggles against German heavy armor. By late July, reports flood back to Supreme Headquarters. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, reviewing casualty figures from tank battalions, explodes in frustration. "You mean our 76 won't knock these Panthers out?" he demands of his ordnance officers. "I thought it was going to be the wonder gun of the war. Why is it that I'm always the last to hear about this stuff? Ordnance told me this: 76 would take care of anything the Germans had. Now I find you can't knock out a damn thing with it." The crisis runs deeper than anyone in Allied command wants to admit. Standard American armor-piercing ammunition, designated M62 APC, relies on brute kinetic energy. A solid steel projectile must be heavy enough and fast enough to smash through enemy armor. But physics demands a terrible price. To penetrate thick, sloped armor, projectiles need enormous mass and velocity. That requires massive guns mounted on heavy platforms. The Sherman, designed for reliability and mass production, simply isn't big enough to carry a gun powerful enough to defeat the new German tanks frontally. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. Standard tactics emerge by necessity. Sherman platoons learn to sacrifice one section as bait, drawing German fire, while the other section maneuvers for flank shots against thinner side armor. Tankers call it fire and D tactics. The mathematics are brutal. For every Panther destroyed, American units lose an average of 5 Shermans. Crews start calling their tanks Ronsons after the cigarette lighter, whose advertising promised lights first time, every time. Scientists and engineers at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland are racing to solve a Saint-Malard problem that conventional wisdom says cannot be solved. How do you make a small gun penetrate like a large one? The answer lies in a metal that barely exists in the American arsenal, tungsten carbide, one of the hardest substances known to man, with a density nearly twice that of steel. Since the early 1940s, metallurgists have understood that tungsten's extreme density and hardness make it ideal for armor penetration. A small tungsten core, properly designed and moving at sufficient velocity, can penetrate far more armor than a much larger steel projectile. The concept is elegant. Instead of launching a full-caliber steel projectile at moderate velocity, engineers design a sub-caliber tungsten penetrator surrounded by a lightweight aluminum carrier. The aluminum falls away after leaving the barrel, but the tungsten core continues forward at tremendous speed over 3,400 feet per second. At impact, the concentrated energy of the dense tungsten punches through at armor that would stop conventional shells completely. In laboratory testing at Aberdeen during the spring of 1944, prototype HVAP rounds demonstrate astounding performance. A 76mm HVAP round weighing just over 4 pounds with barely 1 pound of tungsten core penetrates more armor than a standard armor-piercing round weighing 14 pounds. The penetration statistics stagger the ordnance officers reviewing the data. At 1,000 yards, the M93 HVAP can punch through 178 millimeters of armor at 30 degrees obliquity. That's enough to penetrate a Panther's gun mantlet, possibly enough to threaten even a Tiger. But there's a catch. Actually, several catches that transform this miracle ammunition into one of the war's most carefully guarded secrets. First, tungsten is scarce. Desperately scarce. Each HVAP round requires nearly a full kilogram of tungsten carbide for its core. And tungsten isn't just needed for ammunition. Machine tools, armor plating, aircraft engines, dozens of critical war industries compete for limited supplies. Most of the world's tungsten comes from China, and even with American mines in California and Nevada ramping up production, there's never enough. Second, the ammunition is brittle. The same hardness that makes tungsten effective at close range becomes a weakness at longer distances. Below approximately 2,300 feet per second, reached at ranges beyond 1,500 yards. The tungsten core tends to shatter on impact against sloped armor, rather than penetrating. The ammunition is deadly at combat ranges, but not the long-range wonder weapon that some had hoped for. Third, and most critically, production is slow. The first HVAP rounds don't reach Europe until August 1944. Initial deliveries total just 2,000 rounds, shipped by air and distributed primarily to tank destroyer battalions, rather than tank units. By February of 1945, after 6 months of production, the average Sherman with a 76mm gun has received only 5 HVAP rounds total, 1 round per month per tank, 5 chances to kill a heavy German tank. This scarcity transforms HVAP from merely scarce ammunition into something approaching sacred. Tank crews don't fire HVAP rounds at routine targets. They save them, hoard them. Every HVAP round represents a single opportunity to engage German heavy armor and survive the encounter. Crews learn to identify targets in seconds. Is that a Panther or a Panzer IV? Tiger or Panther? The wrong decision wastes irreplaceable ammunition. But the scarcity that makes HVAP so precious to American crews creates an unexpected strategic advantage. Because the ammunition is so rare and so carefully rationed, German intelligence largely misses its existence. Unlike the Sherman itself, which appears in every combat report and propaganda photograph, HVAP rounds remain invisible. Tank crews continue to trust in the invulnerability that their thick frontal armor supposedly provides. This invisibility is about to become lethal. September 19th, 1944. The small French town of Arracourt, about 30 miles east of Nancy. Morning fog blankets the rolling hills of Lorraine, reducing visibility to less than 100 yards. Elements of the German 5th Panzer Army's 111th and 113th Panzer Brigades advance through the murk, confident in their new Panther tanks. Most of these crews are fresh from training, but they've been told what they need to know. American Shermans can't penetrate their frontal armor. Victory is assured. They're about to learn otherwise. First Lieutenant Albin Irzik commands a Company 8th Tank Battalion, 4th Armored Division. His Shermans sit in ambush positions along the Arracourt-Metz road, engines idling quietly in the turret of each tank, tucked among the regular armor-piercing and high-explosive rounds, lie between 4 and 6 HVAP rounds. Irzik's crews have been issued strict orders. Save the HVAP for heavy German tanks, close to within 500 yards if possible. Aim for the turret or mantlet. Make every shot count. At 8:05 that morning, Panthers loom out of the fog. The German tanks advance in column formation, turrets traversing slowly, searching for targets they can barely see. They're less than 75 yards from Irzik's lead platoon when American guns open fire. The first HVAP round streaks across the gap and strikes a Panther's gun mantlet dead center. The tungsten-core, traveling at over 1,000 meters per second, concentrates 41,000 foot-pounds of energy into a projectile barely 1.5 inches in diameter. German armor, designed to stop larger, slower projectiles, simply cannot distribute the focused impact. The tungsten core punches through, and the Panther's interior erupts in flame as ammunition ignites. Within 30 seconds, 3 more Panthers burn. German crews, trained to expect immunity from frontal hits, freeze in confusion. These aren't flank shots. These aren't lucky penetrations of weaker armor. These are frontal hits that shouldn't be possible. The psychological shock is immediate and paralyzing. Panthers that should advance and overrun American positions instead halt or reverse, crews suddenly uncertain of their advantage. Captain Kenneth Lamison, commanding C Company of the 37th Tank Battalion, engages German armor from a ridge 500 yards north of Arracourt. His gunner, Corporal James Henderson, fires HVAP at a Panther attempting to withdraw. The round strikes the turret ring, a junction barely 4 inches wide. Metal rips, and the entire turret jams in place. The Panther crew bails out, abandoning a 45-ton tank because a 4-pound projectile destroyed their ability to fight. Throughout September 19th, similar scenes repeat across the Arracourt battlefield. American Sherman crews, suddenly confident that they possess ammunition capable of defeating even German heavy armor, engage Panthers at ranges and angles that would have been suicidal just weeks earlier. The fog that prevents American air support from intervening actually helps American tanks. German armor stumbles into ambush positions where HVAP rounds can be used at their most lethal ranges. By day's end, the 4th Armored Division's Combat Command A reports destroying 43 German tanks, most of them factory-new Panthers. American losses total 5 Shermans and 3 tank destroyers. The kill ratio better than 5-1 against supposedly superior German armor stuns commanders on both sides. American crews realize they've been given a weapon that changes the fundamental calculus of tank combat. German commanders realize, with growing alarm, that American gun technology has made an unexpected leap forward. A captured German battle report from the 113th Panzer Brigade, recovered days after the battle, reveals the psychological impact. American tanks now possess ammunition capable of penetrating Panther frontal armor at combat ranges. Our standard defensive tactics must be revised. Tank commanders report loss of confidence in armor protection previously considered adequate. That loss of confidence matters more than the physical tanks destroyed. German Panzer doctrine since 1941 has relied on thick armor and powerful guns to establish local superiority. Panther and Tiger crews advance boldly, trusting their armor to protect them while they destroy lighter enemy tanks from range. But if American guns can penetrate that armor even occasionally, even at close range, then German heavy tanks become vulnerable in ways that doctrine doesn't address. The problem for German intelligence is that they don't understand what hit them. Panther armor recovered from Arracourt shows penetrations that shouldn't be possible for standard 76mm ammunition. Some German analysts theorize that Americans have fielded 90mm guns on Sherman chassis. Others suggest that British 17-pounder guns have been distributed to American units. The truth that Americans have developed a tungsten-core projectile in extremely limited quantities doesn't appear in German intelligence reports until months later. This intelligence failure has consequences that extend far beyond Arracourt. As autumn 1944 progresses, and German forces fall back toward the West Wall, defensive planning still assumes that American Shermans pose a minimal frontal threat to German heavy armor. Tiger and Panther battalions continue to be deployed in ways that expose their frontal armor, trusting that superior protection compensates for inferior numbers. They're wrong, but they won't fully realize how wrong until December, when the next great armored battle erupts in the Furt. Ardennes, October 1944 through November. The Allied advance slows as logistics catch up, and German resistance stiffens along the Siegfried Line. For American tank units, this pause brings welcome reinforcement, including more 76mm Shermans and, critically, more HVAP ammunition. Production of HVAP rounds finally reaches meaningful levels. By November, American factories produce approximately 10,000 rounds per month, still far short of demand, but enough that tank battalions begin receiving regular shipments rather than the trickle that arrived in August and September. Tank units establish new protocols. HVAP rounds are stored separately from standard ammunition, carefully tracked, and issued only for specific engagements. They learn that the ammunition works best at ranges between 200 and 800 yards, close enough for accuracy and maximum penetration, far enough to avoid return fire from German tanks. They learn to aim for specific weak points: the Panther's gun mantlet, the Tiger's turret sides, the junction between turret and hull, where armor is thinner. Most critically, they learn that HVAP rounds hitting at oblique angles tend to shatter rather than penetrate. Frontal shots work. Hits against heavily sloped armor do not. This knowledge doesn't spread through formal training manuals. Instead, it passes from crew to crew, battalion to battalion, in the informal networks that connect combat tankers. A sergeant who kills a Panther with HVAP shares the engagement details with other tank commanders at maintenance halts. An after-action review identifies successful tactics that other companies can adopt. Slowly, American armor develops an institutional understanding of how to employ their secret weapon effectively. Meanwhile, German forces prepare for their last great offensive in the West. The plan, conceived by Hitler and refined by Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, calls for a massive armored thrust through the Ardennes forest, driving northwest toward Antwerp and splitting Allied armies. The operation depends on speed, surprise, and the presumed superiority of German heavy armor over American tanks. That presumption is about to be tested in the largest armored battle American forces have yet fought in Western Europe. And this time, American tank crews will have more than 5 or 6 HVAP rounds per tank. Not many more shortages remain critical, but enough to make a difference. Enough to surprise Tiger and Panther crews, who still believe that American Shermans pose no serious frontal threat. The Ardennes offensive begins before dawn on December 16, 1944. Across 85 miles of thinly held American lines, 3 German armies attack through snow and fog. Among the assault formations are some of the Wehrmacht's most powerful units. The 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler, the 2nd Panzer Division, heavy tank battalions equipped with 45 Tigers and numerous Panthers. German operational planning assumes that American forces, especially isolated forward units, will crumble when confronted by overwhelming armored force. Previous experience suggests that American tanks will avoid frontal engagements with Panthers and Tigers, buying time through defensive actions while waiting for artillery support or tank destroyers. German armor, properly employed, should smash through American positions before defenders can organize effective resistance. The first few days of battle seem to confirm these assumptions. German armor punches deep into American lines, capturing fuel depots and ammunition dumps. Some American units break and retreat. Others find themselves surrounded, fighting desperate defensive actions in villages and road junctions. By December 19th, lead elements of the 2nd Panzer Division have advanced nearly 50 miles, threatening the crucial road junction at Bastogne. But something unexpected is happening in those defensive battles. American tank units, particularly those equipped with 76mm guns and precious stocks of HVAP ammunition, are not avoiding combat with German heavy armor. They're seeking it out, ambushing it, and killing it at ranges and under conditions that German tank crews believed impossible. December 20th, 1944, the village of Celles, Belgium. Obersturmführer Ernst Bachmann commands a Tiger tank from the 501st Heavy Tank Battalion, spearheading the 2nd Panzer Division's advance. His orders are simple: push west, seize the bridge at the Meuse River, maintain momentum. Intelligence briefings assured him that American resistance would be scattered and poorly equipped. Shermans, if encountered, could be dealt with from maximum range. Bachmann's confidence rests on 29 previous engagements where his Tiger survived American fire without serious damage. 100mm of frontal armor, 120 to 200mm on the gun mantlet. No American tank in the European theatre has penetrated Tiger frontal armor in his experience. Every Sherman he's encountered either died trying or fled. What Bachmann doesn't know is that scattered among the American defensive positions ahead are tanks carrying ammunition he's never heard of, and the American commanders waiting in ambush have had 4 months to learn exactly where to aim those tungsten-cored rounds. Staff Sergeant Francis Curry, commanding a platoon of M18 Hellcat tank destroyers attached to the 30th Infantry Division, watches the German column through his binoculars. 3 Tigers, advancing in line formation down the snow-covered road from Celles. Behind them, half-tracks carrying Panzer grenadiers. The Germans move with the casual confidence of an army that believes it owns the battlefield. Curry's Hellcats each carry 8 HVAP rounds for their 76mm guns, more than Sherman crews typically receive because tank destroyer units get priority allocation. His crews know the doctrine. Let the Tigers close to within 500 yards. Target the lead and trail vehicles first to trap the column. Aim for the turret sides where armor is thinner. Fire HVAP only. Save standard ammunition for the half-tracks. At 480 yards, Curry gives the order. 3 HVAP rounds crack downrange simultaneously. The lead Tiger's turret erupts in orange flame as tungsten punches through 80mm of side armor and detonates stored ammunition. The rear Tiger takes a hit through the engine deck, not a penetration that should be possible, according to German armor specifications, but tungsten cores don't read specifications. They concentrate 40,000 foot-pounds of energy into a projectile, the diameter of a man's thumb, and steel that can stop conventional shells, simply tears under the focused assault. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The middle Tiger, now trapped between burning vehicles, traverses desperately. Its 88mm gun fires, destroying one Hellcat. But the remaining American tank destroyers are already repositioning, and the Tiger's crew has made a critical error. They've turned to engage the visible threat, exposing their side armor to a second Hellcat position. Another HVAP round streaks across 300 yards. Penetration. The Tiger's crew bails out through the emergency hatches, abandoning a 57-ton fortress because a 4-pound projectile found the weak point that intelligence reports insisted didn't exist. This scene with variations repeats across the Ardennes salient throughout late December. American armor, no longer intimidated by German heavy tanks, engages them with tactics specifically designed to exploit HVAP's characteristics. The results shake German confidence at every level. A report from the 1st SS Panzer Division, captured after the war, reveals the psychological impact. American tank units demonstrate unexpected capability against our armor. Multiple instances of frontal penetrations of both Panther and Tiger tanks at ranges of 400 to 600 meters. Previously reliable armor protection can no longer be assumed. Tank commanders report severe degradation of morale. Crews request infantry support before advancing against American positions, a reversal of normal doctrine. That last sentence matters enormously. German armoured doctrine, since Poland has assumed that tanks lead assaults, with infantry following to consolidate gains. Tanks don't wait for infantry support, they provide it, but if tank crews no longer trust their armour protection, the entire operational concept collapses. Advances slow, tanks move cautiously, probing for threats rather than exploiting breakthroughs. The speed and shock that define blitzkrieg evaporate. The Battle of the Bulge produces another unexpected consequence. For the first time, American and German tank crews are fighting at close ranges in terrain that favours ambush tactics. The Ardennes forests and narrow roads force German armour into predictable routes where American defenders can establish killing zones. And at ranges of 200 to 500 yards, perfect HVAP employment distance, American 76mm guns become genuinely dangerous, even to Tigers. December 23, 1944. Near Mannheim, Belgium. The 2nd SS Panzer Division launches a night attack supported by Tiger tanks. They expect to overrun American positions before dawn. Instead, they encounter elements of the 7th Armoured Division, including the 40th Tank Battalion equipped with 76mm Shermans. Technical Sergeant Robert Early, a veteran of Normandy and Arracourt, commands the lead, Sherman in a hasty defensive position. He has 7 HVAP rounds loaded. His tank received an extra issue because of the emergency. In the pre-dawn darkness, German armour advances with headlights on, attempting to create confusion and prevent aimed American fire. Early's gunner, Corporal Michael Patterson, tracks a Tiger silhouette at 300 yards. The range is almost point-blank for tank combat. Patterson fires HVAP. The tungsten-core strikes the Tiger's gun mantlet, the most heavily armoured point on the entire vehicle. At this range, with this ammunition, even 200mm of armour isn't enough. The round punches through, and the Tiger's interior becomes a killing box as fragments ricochet and ammunition begins to cook off. The surviving Tiger crews report the engagement to their battalion commander. The report, preserved in German records, provides crucial insight into how HVAP affected German tactical thinking. American anti-tank capability has increased. Significantly, multiple confirmed frontal penetrations at close range. Ammunition appears to be of new type, possibly tungsten-core special rounds. Recommend avoiding close-range engagements until intelligence can confirm American ammunition types and develop countermeasures. But there are no countermeasures to tungsten travelling at 3,400 feet per second. German armour metallurgy, already stretched to its limits, cannot produce steel thick enough to stop HVAP at combat ranges without making tanks too heavy to move. The only reliable defence is range-keeping American tanks beyond HVAP's effective distance, but in the Ardennes, with its forests and terrain restrictions, maintaining range is impossible. By Christmas Day, the German offensive has stalled. Multiple factors contribute: fuel shortages, air attacks once weather clears, stubborn American infantry defense. But among those factors, mentioned in German after-action reports with increasing frequency, is the unexpected effectiveness of American tank guns. Units that planned to brush aside Sherman tanks find themselves taking casualties from frontal engagements. Operations that assumed rapid armour advances bog down as tank commanders proceed cautiously, knowing their armour protection has become unreliable. The bulge collapses as American forces counterattack. German armour, already depleted by 3 weeks of combat, falls back toward the Rhine. American tank battalions pursue, and their after-action reports provide statistical evidence of HVAP's impact. The 3rd Armoured Division reports destroying 73 German tanks during January operations. Of these, 41 were killed by 76mm guns, an unprecedented percentage. Previously, tank destroyer battalions with 90mm or 3-inch guns claimed the majority of German armour kills. But with HVAP available, Sherman crews no longer need to defer to heavier weapons. The 7th Armoured Division provides even more specific data. During the defence of Saint-Vith and subsequent counter-offensives, their tank battalions fired approximately 380 HVAP rounds and claimed 72 confirmed armour kills. That's nearly a 20% hit-to-kill ratio, extraordinary for tank combat, where most rounds miss entirely. The high effectiveness reflects both the lethality of HVAP rounds and the carefully developed tactics for employing them. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. February 1945. By now, German intelligence has finally identified HVAP ammunition and understands its characteristics. Captured American tanks and interrogated prisoners provide details. A German Ordnance report, dated February 10, 1945, analyzes recovered HVAP rounds and concludes, American tungsten-core ammunition represents significant threat to all German armour at ranges below 1,000 meters. Penetration characteristics exceed previous American ammunition by approximately 40%. No field modification to existing armour can provide adequate protection. Recommend tactical adjustments to maintain engagement ranges beyond 1,000 meters. But tactical recommendations mean nothing when Germany lacks the fuel to maneuver, the territory to establish defensive depth, and the trained crews to replace casualties. By February, German armour formations exist more on paper than in reality. The once fearsome Tiger battalions have been reduced to handfuls of operational vehicles. Panther production continues, but new tanks can't reach frontline units because Allied air power controls the daylight skies. And now, when German tanks do reach the front, they face an American armoured force that has learned to kill them efficiently. HVAP availability increases steadily throughout early 1945. By March, some tank battalions report having 15 to 20 HVAP rounds per tank, still not unlimited, but enough that commanders feel comfortable engaging German armour whenever encountered. The final statistics tell the story. From August 1944 through May 1945, American forces in Europe received approximately 18,000 HVAP rounds for 76mm guns. Given that American tank battalions in Europe contained roughly 1,576mm Shermans at any given time, and assuming even distribution, that's about 12 rounds per tank over 9 months of combat. Not many, but 12 opportunities to penetrate armour that was supposed to be impenetrable proved sufficient to fundamentally alter the tactical balance. The psychological impact may have mattered more than the physical. German tank crews, conditioned to believe in their armor's protection, learned that American Shermans could kill them frontally. That knowledge changed behavior. Crews became cautious. Advances slowed. The aggressive, confident armor tactics that had terrified Allied forces in 1940 through 1943 simply disappeared, replaced by defensive caution born of vulnerability. An American intelligence report from March 1945, based on interrogations of captured German tank crews, notes, "Prisoners consistently report that American tank guns have become more effective." Multiple subjects mention that armor protection previously considered adequate is no longer reliable. This perception affects tactical decisions and contributes to declining German combat effectiveness. April 1945. The Rhine has been crossed. American armored columns race across Germany, sometimes advancing 50 miles per day. German armor, when encountered at all, fights from prepared positions rather than counter-attacking. The tactical initiative has completely reversed from the desperate summer of 1944. Captain James MacDonald, commanding a company of Shermans in the 4th Armoured Division, the same unit that fought at Arracourt, encounters a Panther blocking a road near Würzburg. 8 months earlier, this would have been a tactical problem requiring careful manoeuvring and probable casualties. Now, MacDonald simply orders his lead tank to fire HVAP, 1 round, 1 kill. The column continues. This casual efficiency, turning what had been major tactical problems into minor inconveniences, represents the ultimate success of the HVAP program. Not because it made Shermans equal to German heavy tanks in all respects, but because it gave American crews the confidence and capability to engage German armor without fear. And in war, confidence matters as much as firepower. May 8, 1945. As American and Soviet forces occupy Germany, Ardennes officers begin collecting battlefield data to assess weapon effectiveness. The HVAP analysis reveals fascinating patterns. Total HVAP rounds fired in combat, approximately 11,300. That's a 7.5% hit-to-kill ratio, low compared to the controlled tests, but extraordinary for battlefield conditions where most shots miss. More significantly, the 842 confirmed kills represent about 11% of all German tanks destroyed by American forces on the Western Front after August 1944. But statistics don't capture the strategic impact. HVAP didn't win the war. Industrial capacity, air power, and Soviet pressure on the Eastern Front matter far more. But it did solve a specific, critical problem. It gave American tank crews the ability to fight German heavy armor frontally, removing the tactical paralysis that had plagued operations in Normandy. And it demonstrated that clever metallurgy and industrial chemistry could sometimes overcome raw size and weight. The German reaction, preserved in captured documents, reveals how deeply HVAP affected their thinking. A post-action analysis from Army Group B, dated March 1945, concludes, American development of tungsten-core ammunition represents unexpected technological achievement. Our intelligence services failed to identify this development during critical period from August through December 1944. This failure contributed to tactical miscalculations and unnecessary armor losses. American industrial capacity to produce specialized ammunition in militarily significant quantities exceeded German estimates. That last sentence carries bitter irony. Germany pioneered tungsten-core anti-tank ammunition with their Panzer grenade 40 rounds. But tungsten shortages caused by Allied blockades cutting off Portuguese and Spanish supplies meant German ammunition remained scarce throughout the war. Meanwhile, American access to tungsten from California, Nevada, and continuing Chinese supplies allowed them to produce HVAP in quantities sufficient to change battlefield dynamics. The Tiger tank crews who survived the war carried memories of that technological reversal. Werner Wolf, a Tiger commander who fought in the Ardennes, later wrote, "We were told that American tanks could not penetrate our frontal armor." This was true in 43 and early 44, but by December 44, it was no longer true. American guns had improved, and our intelligence had not kept pace. When we learned that Shermans could kill Tigers from the front, our tactical doctrine collapsed. We became defensive, cautious. We lost the initiative, and without the initiative, our armor advantage meant nothing. The broader implications extended beyond individual battles. HVAP demonstrated that specialized ammunition could sometimes compensate for inferior gun size. This lesson would shape post-war tank development. The United States continued developing tungsten penetrator ammunition, leading eventually to the armor-piercing, fin-stabilized discarding sabot rounds that modern tanks fire today. The principle, a dense, sub-caliber penetrator achieving effects beyond its apparent size, became fundamental to anti-armor warfare. The story doesn't end in Europe. When North Korea invaded South Korea in June 1950, American forces initially deployed with leftover World War II equipment, including M4 Shermans and M26 Pershings. These tanks faced Soviet-built 34-85s capable vehicles roughly equivalent to German Panthers. But this time, American tanks had abundant HVAP ammunition. The tungsten that had been critically scarce in 1944 was readily available by 1950. Sherman crews engaging 34s found that HVAP rounds punched through Soviet armor with reliable effectiveness. Kill ratios in Korea heavily favored American tanks, partly due to superior crew training, but also because American ammunition technology had matured. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams, the same officer who commanded the 37th Tank Battalion at Arracourt, later became Army Chief of Staff. The M1 Abrams tank, introduced in 1980 and still serving today, bears his name. Its main gun fires armor-piercing ammunition, whose fundamental design traces directly to those HVAP rounds from 1944. Tungsten or depleted uranium penetrators, lightweight carriers, extreme velocity. The principle remains unchanged, only the scale has increased. The metallurgists and engineers who developed HVAP never became household names. No monuments commemorate their work, but their achievement making a 4-pound projectile as lethal as shells weighing 4 times as much saved countless American lives and helped break German armoured power when it mattered most. For the Sherman crews who fought with HVAP, the ammunition represented something both practical and symbolic. Practically, it gave them a fighting chance against tanks that had previously seemed invincible. Symbolically, it proved that American industry and ingenuity could solve problems that appeared insurmountable. German tanks might have thicker armor and more powerful guns, but American factories could produce specialized ammunition in quantities sufficient to matter. And in industrial warfare, quantity has a quality all its own. The German tank crews who faced HVAP learned a different lesson, one that contributed to their final defeat. Technology matters, but so does industrial capacity. Intelligence matters, but so does adaptation. And armor that protects against known threats provides no security against innovations you don't expect. On that December morning in 1944, when Klaus Weber's Tiger crew advanced through the Ardennes fog, believing themselves invulnerable, they carried the confidence of 3 years' superiority. American tanks had never seriously threatened Tigers from the front. Standard ammunition bounced off. Tactics emphasized avoiding heavy German armor, not engaging it. But the rules had changed, and German intelligence hadn't noticed. Somewhere in the snow-covered forests ahead, American tank crews waited with ammunition that German doctrine insisted didn't exist. Tungsten cores that would punch through armor German engineers had designed to be impenetrable. And when those rounds found their targets through gun mantlets, turret rings, side armor, They would prove that innovation matters as much as thickness. The secret weapon that German tank crews never knew about turned out to be not just the ammunition itself, but the industrial capacity to produce it in meaningful quantities and the tactical intelligence to employ it effectively. HVAP didn't make Shermans better than Tigers, but it made them good enough. And in war, good enough often proves sufficient. The tungsten cores that changed tank warfare in Europe travelled at speeds exceeding 1,000 meters per second. But their impact moved at the speed of psychology, the sudden realization among German crews that their armor protection had become unreliable. That psychological shift, more than any single battle, marked the moment when German armored superiority truly ended, not with a dramatic confrontation between super-heavy tanks and wonder weapons, but with a quiet metallurgical achievement that gave American crews 6 chances per tank to kill machines they'd been taught to fear. 6 rounds that transformed the tactical calculus. 6 rounds that proved sufficient to break both armor plate and the confidence that armor supposedly provided. And the German tank crews who might have adapted to this new threat never got the chance, because they never received the intelligence that would have warned them. They advanced into battle believing in invulnerability that no longer existed, and they paid for that ignorance, with abandoned Tigers, burning Panthers, and the slow collapse of the armoured force that had once seemed unstoppable. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.